Your phone rings on a Saturday morning. You already had plans. Maybe nothing dramatic, groceries, a walk, finally fixing something around the house, maybe just an hour where nobody needs anything from you. Then you see the name on the screen. And before you even answer, part of you already knows what is coming. A favor. A problem. A ride. A decision. Something that somehow becomes yours the moment someone says, "Can you help me with this?" You say yes. Not because you have plenty of time. Not because you really want to. You say yes because somewhere along the way, being needed became one of the ways you learned to feel valuable. And that may be the real reason being the reliable one starts to feel so exhausting after 50. Not because you suddenly care less. Not because people necessarily became more demanding. But because a strength that once gave you identity, belonging, and pride may have quietly turned into a role you no longer know how to leave. There are 3 things worth understanding here. Why so many Gen X adults became deeply identified with being dependable. Why saying no can trigger guilt even when you are already exhausted. And what starts changing when other people discover that your competence is no longer automatically available to them. For many Gen X adults, self-reliance was not just encouraged. It was expected. Figure it out. Do not make a big deal out of it. Handle your own problems. Keep moving. Do what needs to be done. Those messages can create capable adults. But capability has a hidden cost when other people begin treating it like permanent availability. At work, you become the person who gets the difficult task because everyone knows you will finish it. In the family, you become the one who remembers the appointment, fills out the form, makes the call, checks on the parent, helps the adult child, organizes the plan. Among friends, you become the person who listens, advises, responds, and fixes. And because you are good at it, the pattern can look healthy from the outside. Reliable. Responsible. Strong. Until one small request makes you unexpectedly angry. Someone says, "Can you just do this one thing?" And inside, the reaction is much bigger than the request. Why is it always me? That reaction matters. Because the anger may not be about the favor in front of you. It may be the emotional bill for years of automatic yes. That is the first shift. The exhaustion may not come only from how much people ask of you. It may come from how quickly you turn another person's need into your responsibility. Someone says they are overwhelmed. Your mind starts solving. Someone says they do not know what to do. You begin planning. Someone is uncomfortable. You start adjusting yourself. And before you consciously decide anything, you are already carrying part of the problem. That is where reliability stops being a choice and becomes a reflex. And reflexes are difficult to question because they often feel like personality. Now imagine a different scene. It is Sunday afternoon. You are tired. A family member asks you to take care of something they probably could handle themselves. You can do it. That is exactly what makes the situation difficult. Because your mind immediately begins building the case. It will only take a few minutes. They need me. It is easier if I just do it. I do not want them to think I am selfish. But notice what may be missing. Do I actually want to take this on? Do I have the energy? Is this really my responsibility? What happens if I do not step in? For someone who has spent decades being the dependable one, those questions can feel almost irresponsible. Because capability and responsibility have slowly fused together. If you can solve it, you feel like you should. If you notice the need, you feel like you own part of the solution. If someone depends on you, disappointing them can feel like a failure of character. And this is where the second question becomes important. Why does saying no create so much guilt? Because no may feel like more than a boundary. It may feel like a threat to identity. Being reliable brings rewards. People trust you. They praise your strength. They call you first. They tell others that you are the person who always comes through. And underneath all of that is something psychologically powerful. Being needed gives you a clear place. Someone needs you, so you matter. Someone depends on you, so your role is secure. Someone calls you first, so you know where you belong. That is why saying no can feel strangely dangerous. You are not only declining a task. You may be challenging the role that helped you feel valuable. And after 50, that role can start to become expensive. Time begins to feel more finite. Energy becomes more noticeable. You start seeing how often your own plans are the first ones sacrificed. You notice how long it takes to recover from a week in which everyone had access to you. And sometimes what feels like resentment toward other people is actually resentment toward a pattern you keep participating in. That is the mini inversion. You may not be tired of helping people. You may be tired of disappearing inside the role of the helper. Helping is something you do. Being the reliable one can become something you believe you must be. One is a choice. The other becomes a contract. And the contract often sounds like this. I stay useful. I stay easy to depend on. I do not become a burden. And in return, I stay valued. The problem is that this contract becomes harder to maintain over time. Because the more your value depends on usefulness, the harder it becomes to rest without guilt. The harder it becomes to ask for help. The harder it becomes to disappoint anyone. And the harder it becomes to let another adult struggle with a problem you know how to solve. This is where saying no becomes revealing. Not because no is always the right answer. But because no shows you what the relationship is built on. Suppose you begin making small changes. You stop answering every request immediately. You say, I cannot do that this week. You stop volunteering before anyone has actually asked. You allow a coworker, sibling, friend, or adult child to solve something without stepping in. Some people adapt. They may be surprised, but they adjust. They still call you. They still care about you. They still want your company even when you are not doing something for them. Other people react differently. They become irritated. They ask what happened to you. They tell you that you have changed. And they may be right. But the important question is, what changed? Your character. Or their access to your time, labor, competence, and emotional availability? That is the third loop closing. When your usefulness decreases, you begin to see whether a relationship values your presence or mainly depends on your function. That can hurt. But it can also clarify. Some relationships were never intentionally unfair. They simply adapted to the version of you that always said yes. If you always solved the problem, people stopped developing the habit of solving it themselves. If you always responded immediately, they began expecting immediate access. If you always absorbed the inconvenience, they stopped noticing that there was a cost. That does not make them bad people. But it does mean the pattern may need to change. And this is the deeper inversion. Saying no does not necessarily make you less reliable. It can make your reliability more honest. Think about two people. The first says yes to almost everything. Then feels exhausted, resentful, distracted, and secretly hopes nobody asks for anything else. The second helps often, but not automatically. Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it is, I can help for 20 minutes. Sometimes it is, I cannot take that on. Which person's yes actually means more? Healthy reliability is not permanent availability. It is consistency with limits. It means your yes can be trusted because it was actually chosen. That is very different from a yes produced by guilt, fear, habit, or identity. And boundaries do more than protect energy. They make relationships more accurate. They show other people what you can actually give. They show you what you are giving freely and what you are giving because you are afraid of what might happen if you do not. And perhaps most importantly, they begin separating your worth from your usefulness. You can be generous without being on call. You can be dependable without becoming the emergency system for everyone around you. You can care deeply and still allow another adult to experience inconvenience, uncertainty, or the consequences of their own choices. That is not abandonment. Sometimes it is respect. So the next time your phone rings and that old sentence starts forming before you even hear the full request, "I'll handle it." Pause for a moment. Not to become cold. Not to become selfish. Just long enough to ask, am I choosing to help, or am I afraid of what it means about me if I do not? You may still say yes. But now it is your yes. Because after 50, the goal may not be to stop being the reliable one. It may be to stop believing that reliability is the price you have to pay to deserve your place in other people's lives. You can still be someone people trust. But your competence does not belong to everyone who asks for it. And sometimes the first honest no is not the moment you become less dependable. It is the moment being dependable finally becomes a choice again. If this kind of psychology after 50 helps you recognize the hidden patterns underneath everyday behavior, continue with another Inner Life Decoded video and subscribe for more.